Well, fellas, I'm looking at Eva Longoria's surprising DNA test. Eva Longoria identified as being Mexican. She's from Texas. And the people in Texas, the Mexicans in Texas, they do look different than the Mexicans in California. I've always noticed that. They're lighter skinned often. One of the guys I was in Toastmasters with, he had blonde hair and blue eyes like his sister, even though he said that his parents were the brown Mexicans. Both him and his sister came out with blonde hair and blue eyes. But he had the little body, the short, little chubby body of that you see on some of the people who are descended from Mexico. Shit, that didn't sound right. But anyway, I'm looking over her surprising DNA, and she came out 70% European, which is Spanish. They traced her family story down. Apparently, the original Longoria, however you say her name, he got in an argument over his land in Spain and left to the United States. And Spain owned Texas back then. In fact, the United States, we actually ripped them off. We slaughtered them. Just like in the California War, the Mexicans that were here, all they had were hoes and rakes, basically. Whereas the United States, just mowed them down with guns. It wasn't even a fair fight. We do know the Battle of the Alamo and all that, but you don't know the whole story, basically, is my point. But either way, United States ran them out of Texas and took over Texas. All right, so it was originally Spanish-owned land, just like Florida was owned by Spain. But look at that, 27% Native American, which is basically the development of the Mexican race is mostly Indio, as they call it, and they actually look down on having Indian blood because white supremacy got to them too, and they have the whole colors tan issue. If you're brown, you're less than, all that stuff, all that nonsense. But look at this. This happens so often with Mexicans who do their DNA. 3% African. You know Eva Longoria, right? She's 3% African blood. Isn't that interesting? As I said way back, I think in 2008, I was looking at DNA and stuff like that. That was before the racists got in there and start manipulating shit on Wikipedia and things like that. But I saw that 75% of the Mexicans below the border are carrying African DNA. That means it's coming from the Native American blood. Or it could be coming from Native American blood. I do know that they did release their slaves, and those slaves assimilated into the population. And just like on Jovina's island, all it took was a couple of blacks on the island before dark skin was prevalent on her island as well. Her own father. On the mainland, the first incursion of black into the Spanish and Portuguese occurred in 711 AD, stopped in 1492, but it came back with the slave trade because they were importing slaves. The people that ruled them, they went out and conquered or enslaved them, which is us Africans. So they had a second influx of slave blood. And I have a video documenting that, but it's in Portuguese. I tried to get her mother and father to listen to it because I wanted them to interpret it for me, but I don't think they liked what they were listening to because she stopped interpreting, and it was on their actually last day in Sacramento, and they were on the way out, but that might have been why, but I think they don't like hearing that. Maybe Jovina would know something about that.
I don't know. It's not something I ever discussed with them.
None something I ever discussed with them. Well, interesting DNA findings coming back, though. It makes me wonder, where did the African come from? Its had to come from the Native American side. The Native American blood. Remember the argument that that we were having trade? so far they haven't found any black tribes, but there was trade going on between America and Africa. There were blacks that were released in Mexico. So all it took was one of those biracial blacks. I could see, one of the young Spanish boys falling for one of the pretty darker-skinned Mexicans. That's all it took was to have, kids with just one, marry one. Then the percentage it deletes after you start having more kids, and that child grows up, marries a Spaniard-looking one, and then they marry a Spaniard-looking one. Pretty soon, the dark skin is bred out. Remember the fellow I talked about in a recent video, the English geneticist from Harvard? Not Harvard, sorry, but what's that big college in England? I forgot the name of it, but he's from that big college in England, prestigious place. He came and tested people in the South, and every white person he tested, they had African DNA, DNA, in other words. Every black they tested had European. Now, he didn't test everybody, but the people that he tested when he was coming here doing his little study had it, as he announced on the TV show. So, it would be really cool if some of those racists down there did a DNA test and they turned up having like 3% African blood. If the whole fucking group of the KKK test themselves and they came up 3%. Like, I think my friend Neil, he would come up like 3% because he has really pale skin. Nothing, I see nothing. I could kind of see it in that Cobb guy, that white racist, the one that started his own white town only. I can see it in his hair. There's something in the color of the hair and the way it looks. It's kind of a little bit slightly kinky, even though it's straight. But there's some kinkiness to it around the edges. That's why you can tell, a lot of mixed race, because they get kinky hair around the edges. So, 3%. 3% African. Every Mexican that I've seen who test their DNA, or even South Americans who test their DNA, like from, if they're the white Dominicans or from places like that, they've came back with a certain percentage of African blood. There must have been a lot of fucking going on a long time ago. A lot of fucking. I can see some white guys who are extremely racist, excuse me, requesting a DNA test before they marry someone. I can see that coming down the pipeline.